Dr. Evelyn Carter had always believed in hard work, integrity, and the sanctity of trust. As one of the top cardiothoracic surgeons at St. Vincent's Hospital in Chicago, she built her career with precision and resilience. Her marriage to Lucas Bennett, the hospital's ambitious administrator, was supposed to be a partnership, one where love, respect, and shared ambitions intertwined. But over time, Evelyn had felt something slipping. A chill beneath Lucas's charming smile, and a growing distance she couldn't quite explain. The Bennett family was powerful, their influence reaching deep into the hospital's board and social circles. Evelyn had tried to fit into their polished, insular world, attending lavish family gatherings at their luxurious penthouse and enduring their subtle disapproval. Lucas's mother, Vivian Bennett, ruled the family with an iron will disguised as genteel warmth, orchestrating their lives with manipulative precision. And then there was Derek, Lucas's younger brother, a man whose entrepreneurial ambitions were matched only by his staggering incompetence. Evelyn had watched Derek drift from one failed business scheme to the next, leaving financial wreckage in his wake, all while the family continued to coddle him as if he were some prodigal son bound for greatness. Evelyn remembered the moment with clarity. She had been summoned to a Bennett family dinner under the pretense of a friendly gathering. When she arrived, the entire family was assembled around the expansive mahogany table, their expressions strangely tight-lipped and expectant. Vivian's carefully rehearsed words had dripped with condescension as she explained that, after much discussion, the family had voted on whether Evelyn should lend Derek $20,000 to save his latest medical tech startup. It was framed as democratic fare, a gesture of family unity. Majority rules, Vivian had declared with a saccharine smile. But Evelyn had seen the trap for what it was, a calculated maneuver to guilt her into compliance, sanctioned by Lucas's infuriating silence. He had sat there, gaze downcast, refusing to defend her or even acknowledge the absurdity of the situation. Evelyn's blood had boiled, but her face remained calm. Years of surgery had trained her well. Steady hands, steady mind. Instead of arguing, Evelyn had smiled coolly and slid a manila envelope across the table, her voice steady as she delivered the bombshell that would shatter their carefully constructed power play. "I have something to vote on, too," she had said, her gaze unflinching. "Let's see how democratic you truly are." Evelyn's journey to that disastrous family meeting had been paved with years of quiet tolerance and subtle dismissals. St. Vincent's Hospital was her sanctuary, a place where her skill and dedication were respected. As one of the youngest cardiothoracic surgeons to ever lead complex surgeries at the hospital, Evelyn's work was demanding but fulfilling. She thrived under pressure, her steady hands and sharp mind revered by colleagues. But outside the sterile precision of the operating room, Evelyn's personal life was far messier. Her marriage to Lucas had once been a bright, promising partnership. He was charming, ambitious, and supportive, or so she had believed. As the hospital's administrator, Lucas had influence and connections, but he never seemed to have the same discipline or integrity Evelyn poured into her work. Their relationship began to fray when Derek, Lucas's younger brother, entered the picture with his incessant failures. Derek was a man of grand ideas and terrible execution. He cycled through business ventures like a child discarding toys, crypto trading, luxury real estate flipping, and most recently a medical tech startup he swore would be revolutionary. Evelyn saw the desperation in Derek's eyes every time he pitched his latest scheme at family gatherings, his words too polished, too rehearsed. But worse than Derek's schemes was the family's unwavering loyalty to him. They excused his failures as mere learning experiences, labeling him ambitious instead of irresponsible. Vivian, Lucas's mother, was Derek's most fervent supporter. Her love for her youngest son bordered on obsession. and she coddled him in ways Evelyn found increasingly infuriating. Whenever Derek's ventures imploded, Vivian would rally the family to support him, which usually meant pressuring Evelyn and Lucas to hand over money. And Lucas, despite his own struggles to gain his mother's approval, always caved. At first, Evelyn had tried to be understanding. Derek was family after all. But when his requests for money became a pattern, Evelyn drew a line. She and Lucas had built a comfortable life through careful financial planning. Their joint savings were supposed to be for their future, a house renovation, travel, maybe even children someday. Evelyn's discipline with money was part of who she was, and Lucas had once praised her for it. But now, he seemed content to drain their savings to support Derek's never-ending parade of failures. The breaking point came when Derek appeared at Evelyn's office, unannounced, one rainy Tuesday afternoon. His clothes were disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed, desperation etched into every line of his face. Derek launched into a rambling plea about his latest startup, a cutting-edge medical device he swore would revolutionize patient monitoring. All he needed was $20,000 to keep the project alive. Evelyn listened politely but firmly declined, explaining that their money was tied up in important renovations. Derek's face twisted with frustration, but he said nothing. He simply nodded and left with a resigned shrug. Evelyn had thought that was the end of it, a clean-cut refusal. But 3 days later, the Bennetts summoned her for the so-called family meeting. The memory of Derek's desperate plea echoed in her mind as she walked into that room, unaware of the ambush waiting to devour her. The invitation had seemed innocent enough, a casual dinner at the Bennett family's luxurious penthouse overlooking downtown Chicago. Vivian Bennett had even added a cheerful note at the end of her text, promising Evelyn's favorite dish. But Evelyn's instincts whispered that something was wrong. The Bennetts never did anything without an agenda, especially when Derek was involved. As Evelyn stepped through the sleek glass doors into the sprawling living room, the atmosphere was thick with something unspoken. The entire family was present. Vivian and her husband Charles, their other children, their spouses, and even a couple of distant cousins who had likely been recruited for numbers. Evelyn noted the strained smiles, the nervous glances, and Lucas's hunched posture as he stood by the fireplace, his gaze averted. The room's grandeur, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, only heightened the artificial warmth of their gathering. Vivian wasted no time orchestrating her performance. Once everyone had gathered around the polished mahogany dining table, she cleared her throat with an air of self-importance. "We've been having some discussions, Evelyn, about family and how we help one another." Her words dripped with condescension wrapped in politeness, her perfectly manicured fingers clasped together as if she were delivering a sermon. Derek has been working tirelessly on his new project, a medical tech startup that could change lives. But he's hit a bit of a rough patch, and since we all want to see him succeed, we thought the best way forward would be to handle this democratically. She smiled, her eyes sharp and calculating. "So, we took a vote." Evelyn's stomach tightened. This wasn't a discussion. It was an ambush. The smug looks exchanged around the table only confirmed her suspicion. Her gaze flicked to Lucas, who looked as if he'd rather be anywhere but there. "A vote?" Evelyn echoed, her voice cool, though her pulse quickened. She felt the tension in her shoulders, the quiet rage building beneath her calm exterior. "Yes, dear, a vote." Vivian's voice was honeyed but firm. "Majority rules, it's the fairest way." Charles Bennett, seated like a king at the table's head, nodded in agreement. "We all decided that since Derek's project affects the family's reputation and future, we should all have a say, and we voted that you and Lucas should lend him the money. After all, you're the ones with the means." The entitlement in his voice was staggering, as if Evelyn's hard-earned savings were communal property to be divvied up at their whim. One by one they listed off their reasoning, their words blending into a nauseating chorus of entitlement and manipulation. Derek needed $20,000 to salvage his startup, they claimed. He had so much potential, they insisted. It was only right that Evelyn and Lucas help, they demanded. Evelyn's gaze shifted to Lucas, silently pleading for him to speak up, to defend her, to acknowledge how absurd this all was. But Lucas remained silent, his eyes fixed on the untouched glass of wine in front of him. Whether it was guilt, fear, or indifference that kept him quiet, Evelyn couldn't tell. The entire room stared at her, expectant, their smug smiles daring her to defy them. "So, that's it?" Evelyn asked, her voice betraying nothing. "You all voted, and now I'm just supposed to hand over $20,000? Vivian's smile widened, her satisfaction radiating through the room. "Exactly. It's fair, Evelyn. Majority rules." But the triumph in Vivian's eyes was premature. Evelyn felt her hands tighten around the manila envelope in her bag, a smile tugging at her lip. They thought they had her cornered. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. Evelyn's calm never wavered as she absorbed the smug triumph glittering in Vivian's eyes. The arrogance of their vote, their so-called fairness, stirred something fierce within her, a sharp, unyielding resolve. She took a slow breath, her hands steady as she reached into her leather handbag and withdrew a manila envelope, its edges crisp and smooth against her fingertips. She placed it deliberately on the polished mahogany table, its presence a challenge no one expected. "You're right, Vivian. Majority rules," Evelyn said, her voice so even, so cold, it silenced the room. "And since we're voting on my finances, I think it's only fair we vote on something else as well." Confusion flickered across their faces, mingling with an unease that grew as Evelyn slid the envelope towards Lucas. "Go ahead," she urged. "Open it." Lucas's fingers trembled slightly as he lifted the flap, his eyes darting between Evelyn and his mother, who watched with predatory interest. As Lucas unfolded the documents inside, his face blanched, the color draining away until he resembled a man staring down the barrel of a gun. "What is this?" he stammered, his voice brittle. Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her posture calm but her gaze unrelenting. "It's a revised prenuptial agreement," she explained, her tone smooth as silk. "Drafted and notarized 3 weeks ago. As of now, my assets are legally separated from yours. Every dollar I've earned, every investment I've made, none of it is accessible to you or anyone else." She glanced around the room, taking in the collective shock etched on their faces. "If you're going to treat me like an outsider, then I'll respond accordingly, businesslike, just as you wanted." Vivian's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, her regal composure crumbling. "Evelyn, dear, this isn't necessary," she said, her voice tight with panic now. "We're family. You can't just—" Evelyn cut her off with a raised hand. "No, Vivian. You don't get to lecture me about family when you tried to pressure me into handing over my savings through a ridiculous vote." Her gaze shifted to Charles, who sat frozen in disbelief. "You wanted democracy? Consider this my vote, a vote to protect myself." Lucas's eyes darted desperately between Evelyn and the documents, his betrayal painted plainly across his face. "You can't be serious," he whispered, his voice laced with both fear and disbelief. "You went behind my back?" Evelyn's gaze hardened. "Did you expect me to keep waiting for you to finally stand up for me? To protect our future? You've made it clear where your loyalties lie, Lucas. You never had my back." The finality of her words seemed to slap him across the face. His shoulders slumped, his hands limp against the table. Evelyn's voice softened, but remained firm. "You may have all voted, but this isn't your decision to make. I've already made mine." Her gaze swept over the room one last time before she rose to her feet, her composure flawless. The manila envelope remained on the table like a warning, a testament to her resolve, and as Evelyn turned and walked away from the stunned faces staring after her, she knew the tide had finally shifted. Whatever power they believed they held over her was gone. Evelyn had reclaimed it, along with her dignity. Evelyn's exit from the Bennett penthouse had been clean, but the emotional wreckage she left behind was anything but. She had expected Lucas to call, to text, to storm her apartment demanding explanations. Instead, he remained disturbingly silent. It was Isabella who reached out first, her text arriving late that night with a simple, urgent request. "Can we meet? There's more you need to know." Curious but cautious, Evelyn agreed to meet her at a small coffee shop on the city's north side, neutral ground far from the prying eyes of the Bennett family. When Isabella arrived, her expression was taut, eyes red-rimmed but determined. There was a heaviness about her that Evelyn hadn't seen before, something deeper than the usual familial weariness. Isabella wasted no time, her voice trembling with suppressed fury as she spoke. "I couldn't just sit there and watch them try to manipulate you like that. It's been happening for years, Evelyn, and I was a part of it." Evelyn raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued but her guard still firmly in place. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with suspicion. Isabella's fingers twisted around her coffee cup, her knuckles white. "Derek isn't just some lost cause fumbling through bad investments. He's a parasite. And Lucas has been helping him for years, covering for him, bailing him out. And worse, using your savings to do it." Isabella's words were delivered like blows, each one striking Evelyn's chest with brutal precision. Evelyn's initial reaction was disbelief, but Isabella was prepared. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling through messages, her thumb shaking slightly. "Lucas made me lie to you. Every time you noticed money missing or something didn't add up, he'd come to me first, begging me to cover for him. Said he was just trying to fix things before you found out." Isabella showed Evelyn screenshots of texts, bank statements, and email exchanges between Lucas and Derek, proof that they had been secretly transferring funds from Evelyn's accounts to cover Derek's disastrous ventures. "It's not just the $20,000 they tried to squeeze out of you today," Isabella continued, her voice cracking. "It's been tens of thousands over the years, sometimes more. And they weren't just taking from you. Derek's borrowed from almost everyone in the family. But Lucas, he's been enabling him all along, protecting him, lying to you, using you." Evelyn felt her pulse quicken, fury building in her chest like a wildfire. But what Isabella revealed next shattered whatever sympathy Evelyn had left for Lucas. "They even tried to convince your parents to invest in Derek's startup," Isabella whispered, her eyes filled with guilt. "They told your parents you were involved, that you supported it. They were trying to use your reputation, your success to lure them in." The betrayal was complete. Lucas hadn't just betrayed her trust, he'd exploited her name, her achievements, her very identity to prop up Derek's failures. Evelyn's hands trembled as she took in the evidence, her mind reeling with the depth of the deception. "Why are you telling me this now?" Evelyn asked, her voice strained. Isabella's gaze was steady, her guilt replaced by something fierce and resolute. "Because I'm done letting them control everything. You deserved to know the truth. And because I want to help you make this right." The cracks in the Bennett family's facade were deepening, and Evelyn intended to widen them until the whole rotten structure crumbled. It was no longer just about protecting her finances, it was about reclaiming her life. And she wasn't about to do it alone. Isabella's revelations had ignited something fierce within Evelyn, a hunger for the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. After their tense meeting at the coffee shop, Evelyn returned home feeling both rattled and determined. The evidence Isabella had shown her was damning enough, but Evelyn suspected the deception ran even deeper. She poured herself into uncovering every hidden betrayal, her meticulous nature serving her well as she sifted through financial records, emails, and phone logs. Days stretched into nights, her apartment littered with papers, sticky notes plastered across the walls like a detective's board. The more Evelyn dug, the clearer the pattern became. Derek's manipulations were predictable, Grandiose promises followed by spectacular failures, always cushioned by someone else's money. But Lucas's involvement was far more sinister. He had been playing both sides, manipulating Evelyn's trust while shielding Derek from the consequences of his actions. It was the bank statements that shattered Evelyn's last thread of denial. She discovered multiple unauthorized transfers from their joint accounts over the past year, many of them masked by false invoices Lucas had forged. But that wasn't the worst of it. As she delved deeper into the mess, Evelyn stumbled upon 2 credit cards, opened under her name without her consent. They had been sitting dormant, untouched for months, likely waiting for Derek's next scheme to require another desperate influx of cash. Evelyn's stomach churned with disgust and rage. The man she had trusted for years, the man she had built a life with, had been undermining her financial security in the most calculated, cowardly way imaginable. The final blow came when Evelyn managed to retrieve deleted emails from their shared cloud storage. It was there she found undeniable proof that Lucas and Derek had conspired to use her credentials to solicit investments from her own parents. Posing as Evelyn, Lucas had sent carefully crafted messages to her parents, promising lucrative returns if they would just invest in Derek's medical tech startup. Her parents had thankfully been cautious, their wariness born from years of witnessing Derek's failures from a distance. But the fact that Lucas had been willing to manipulate her own family against her was unforgivable. Evelyn's fury boiled over into cold resolve. She wasn't just going to walk away quietly. She would confront Lucas with everything she had uncovered, but more importantly, she would protect herself from further harm. Evelyn reached out to her lawyer, ensuring her assets were secured and arranging for divorce papers to be drafted. Every conversation with her attorney only steeled her resolve, transforming her pain into something sharper, something unbreakable. She wasn't a victim. She was preparing for war. As Evelyn continued her investigation, Isabella's support remained steadfast. The younger woman had sent over everything she had gathered about Derek and Lucas' schemes over the years. Screenshots of conversations, financial records, even audio recordings of Derek boasting about how easily he manipulated his family. It was overwhelming, but it was also empowering. With every new piece of evidence, Evelyn's vision of what needed to be done grew clearer. She wasn't just uncovering their lies, she was building a fortress of truth around herself. Evelyn's discovery wasn't just about financial betrayal, it was about reclaiming her own narrative. She had spent years trying to fit into a family that saw her as nothing more than a convenient resource. Now, with the truth laid bare before her, she was ready to tear down their illusion of control, and this time, she would not be silenced. Evelyn's return to the Bennett penthouse was deliberate, her every step brimming with purpose. She had orchestrated her arrival to coincide with one of their ostentatious family dinners, an event meant to reinforce their unity and superiority. As she stepped into the lavish dining room, her entrance caused an immediate ripple of discomfort. Vivian's smile faltered, Charles's expression stiffened, and Lucas's eyes widened with thinly veiled panic. But Evelyn remained composed, her gaze sharp and unyielding. She had brought everything with her: files, screenshots, invoices, and the damning truth she had uncovered over weeks of grueling investigation. Her presence alone was enough to silence the room, their shallow pleasantries dying on their tongues as they sensed the storm approaching. "I figured since you all enjoy your little votes," Evelyn began, her voice slicing through the tension like a scalpel, "we should have another one, but this time with all the facts laid bare." She placed a thick folder on the table and opened it with precise clinical movements. The first document she slid forward was a detailed financial record of Lucas's clandestine transactions, proof of his unauthorized withdrawals from their joint accounts, disguised as home repair costs and various other excuses. Evelyn's gaze never left Lucas's face as she spoke, her words cold and deliberate. "You lied to me, repeatedly. Not just about Derek's schemes, but about our own finances. You forged documents, transferred money behind my back, and opened credit cards under my name. And you did it all to enable Derek's failures. Lucas's face paled, his hands trembling as he glanced from Evelyn to the evidence laid before him. Evelyn, I was trying to fix things. Derek needed help, and you thought betraying me was the solution, Evelyn snapped, her composure cracking just enough to let her fury seep through. You hid everything. You used me, manipulated me, and then dragged my parents into your lies, all to prop up Derek's reckless ambitions. The words left her mouth with a force that made even Vivian flinch. Lucas, tell me this. When exactly did I become nothing more than a wallet to you? Evelyn's voice trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of her anger. Lucas's mouth opened and closed, his excuses wilting under her relentless gaze. Vivian tried to interject, her tone condescendingly placating. Evelyn, darling, surely we can sort this out as a family. No. Evelyn's voice cut through Vivian's appeal like a knife. You forfeited the right to call me family when you tried to manipulate me through a rigged vote. When you encouraged Lucas to betray me, you wanted a transaction, so here it is. Evelyn reached into her bag and produced the divorce papers, signed and dated. She placed them on the table with a finality that seemed to suck the air from the room. Consider this my vote. I vote to leave. The silence that followed was deafening, the Bennett staring at her as though the ground had been ripped from beneath their feet. Lucas's eyes were glassy, his hands clutching the edge of the table as if it could anchor him to reality. But Evelyn didn't wait for their reactions. She had made her decision, and there was no turning back. With her head held high, Evelyn walked out of the penthouse, her footsteps echoing against the marble floors. This time, she didn't feel powerless. She felt free, and that freedom tasted better than any hollow apology or desperate plea for forgiveness. Evelyn's decision to walk away from Lucas and the Bennett family was both an end and a beginning. The divorce proceedings were swift and precise, her meticulous preparation ensuring that Lucas couldn't touch a cent of her hard-earned assets. She severed ties with the Bennetts completely, their once overbearing influence reduced to nothing more than an unpleasant memory. Isabella remained the sole exception, their friendship blossoming out of shared disillusionment and a mutual desire to rebuild. Free from the toxicity of the Bennett family, Evelyn poured herself into her work at St. Vincent's Hospital, her focus sharper than ever. But it wasn't all about work. She reclaimed parts of herself she had neglected. Hobbies, friendships, quiet moments of solitude. Nights once spent drowning in stress and suspicion were replaced by peace. Evelyn even found herself laughing again, the weight of betrayal lifting slowly but surely. Isabella proved to be a genuine ally, distancing herself from her family's manipulations and thriving in her own medical career. In time, Evelyn's wounds became scars, reminders of her strength rather than her suffering. She had reclaimed her life, her dignity, and her future, and as Evelyn stood on the rooftop of the hospital one evening, gazing at the Chicago skyline, she knew she had finally found her way back to herself. The story of Evelyn Carter teaches a powerful lesson about self-respect, resilience, and the courage to reclaim one's life. Faced with betrayal from her husband and manipulation from his influential family, Evelyn's journey reveals that loyalty should never come at the cost of one's own dignity or financial security. Her decision to separate her assets and confront the truth demonstrates the importance of setting firm boundaries and protecting oneself from exploitation, even from those who claim to love and support you. The story also highlights the value of trusting one's instincts and not allowing others to dictate your worth or influence your decisions. Evelyn's meticulous investigation and preparation exemplify how foresight and determination can empower someone to take control of their life, rather than be a victim of others' schemes. Moreover, her friendship with Isabella underscores that true allies emerge from unexpected places and that healing is possible with genuine support. Ultimately, Evelyn's experience teaches that walking away from toxicity is not failure, it is strength. By choosing herself over manipulation and deceit, Evelyn proves that real freedom and fulfillment come from valuing your own integrity above others' expectations or approval.